Yes, good morning in Brussels and Europe, and good afternoon in Delhi and India. This is the EBTC webinar on sustainable development in Himalayan cities. My name is Monish Verma. I'm the environment sector expert here. Now I'll briefly give you how we're going to conduct this webinar, the structure. I'll just very briefly tell you about EBTC. And then we had two presentations by two experts. One of the experts has unfortunately not been able to join us, but in any case, his presentation is there from the Indian Mountain Initiative, and the second presentation would be from Feenstra from IARC, which is a architecture and design platform. And we will be talking about largely issues related to mountain cities, and we're distinguishing them from mountain cities everywhere by talking very concertedly about Himalayan cities in particular. And as EBTC has been focusing on project development in particular, also on projects in India, we will actually try to see how innovative bottom-up project development for mountain cities can occur and how we can actually participate in it. We will take question and answers at the end of the webinar, and so please do use the panel to pose your questions. We will take them one by one. All right. So let me just begin and very quickly tell you about what EBTC's idea with respect to this urban issue is like. And let me just, I talked about myself. My second and missing webinar presenter is Krishna Rautela from the Indian Mountain Initiative. He unfortunately was detained in Dehradun and has not been able to come to Delhi. Sort of symptomatic of all the logistical issues that sometimes creep up connecting mountain cities and the plains. And will talk about himself more, but he will talk more about a case study that we did in which Indian Mountain Initiative did in Mussoorie and Dehradun at the beginning of the year, which was in January of this year. The Mountain Cities workshop happened on 19th and 20th of January. All right, so let me first just go ahead. This is the agenda, and so EBTC has actually been working in urban areas from last year, largely because it actually fits quite well with three of the sectors that we work in. One is mobility and transport, the second is energy, and the third being environment and largely water. And those are concerns in all the mountain cities, and that's why we honed in and participated in the Indian Mountain Initiative last year to see what potential there was for collaboration from Europe, and to see how we can structure it further. So in short, we have presence in 4 cities in India. We have our 20 staff. We are looking at projects very clearly, and there are about over 100 projects on the EBTC website which people can refer to. It's also the reference point or nodal point for the Enterprise Europe network, and we connect India with maybe 650 odd centers in Europe which are looking at technology and knowledge. All right. We add, in addition to what we do as a work plan activity being a project of the European Union, we are also looking at technology incubation. We're looking at trying to set up market exploration trips for European vendors, which are very concerted and focused on what the markets exist in India. We're looking at research and innovation related support for European projects in particular, which are looking at producing technologies which are to be brought to market. We're looking at European technologies in general, which are, as you know, are not directly applicable in India. So we're looking at technology localization as a possibility of entering an Indian market, both on technology as well as cost, and definitely the latter. In terms of pilot projects, we are looking at trying to support them from our ecosystem in terms of trying to get our partners to support particular pilots in ensuring that the pilots actually happen properly. Among all of these, we have an IPR-related help desk, which helps all European SMEs to actually enter a market like India and all its complexities, and we can handle all your issues with respect to that. The clean tech collaboration, which I talked about, is looking at really about the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And in the we have honed it down to looking at mountain cities, especially because we think there's a real opportunity there. We're looking, trying to see if we can get a few initiatives with some selected cities, selected mountain cities, and see how we can go ahead and look at developing projects. We are trying to also use different parts of the work plan, like clean tech expert missions, which are looking at, let's say, waste projects, looking at them from the perspective of mountain cities, also with respect to wastewater treatment, again looking them from mountain cities and trying to connect the immediate plain city with the mountain city and seeing what the issues are in both, because they are both important. As you probably know, and I don't have to say this, mountains cover a large percentage of the world's land surface. They are largely water towers, and often in India they do not have water enough in the lean months to actually support their own drinking requirements. So that is some of the issues that actually plague the mountain areas, which are some of the poorest in the world. And so there is scarcity of water resources in particular. There is a requirement for managing water resources properly. And this is coming out from the Mountain Partnership, which is a global document, and I can actually talk real out statistics about the Indian mountains, and I might do that a little bit. So the Indian mountain states that we are looking at are all the 11 states, including the district of Darjeeling, which is a district of West Bengal, and so there are about 11 of them. And this initiative looks at all of these. And key facts within the Indian area is that they have about 16% of the land area, 34% of the forests for India, 6% of the population, about 5% of the GDP in FY12. And these statistics are due to Krishna, who is not here right now, but these are all well validated from the Government of India archives. And similarly, the cities, therefore, class 1 cities still are quite large, and these are something that we can actually focus on. They do have 43% of the population, but they are only 3% of the actual number of towns that exist. And across the Himalayan range, there are about 545 such towns, which are class 1 to class 6, which have all issues. And some key mountain cities that are there, from Srinagar, Manali, Chel, and there are all issues are similar, and issues that actually range from the wetter side of the Himalayas to the less wet side, and which would be the things that we will discuss in the initiative as such. So they are, for instance, one of the major things why Ann is here is to look at master planning. The planning aspects with respect to the mountain cities in particular are significant. There is, as you know, a large tourism influx in the summer, which actually makes all plans not work, but that's no excuse for no planning. So there is no plan for urban transport, there's no plan for drinking water, sewerage, draining, solid waste management. Sometimes the issues with respect to population growth, which occurs again during the summer because of the floating population is so large that it actually has detrimental effects on the environment, and it's even mirrored even in the plains. And so we are looking at trying to set up, in particular, a solution studio, and I think Ann would talk more about this, which would be looking at solutions that are possible from the European point of view, because EBTC is a European project, but there are other concerns that are coming in from other parts of the world, which will be participating with this initiative, would also be looking at similar sort of solutions. So we are looking at a solution-oriented intervention, and that's one of the things that we are looking at. So there are key areas, city master plan, sometimes aesthetics. These are things that the mountain initiative is actually itself focusing on. And we discussed this in the mountain cities to begin with, the cities workshop in January, but we would be looking at it more carefully as we run up to the next event, which is actually in the dark, and I will talk a little bit more about it in a little bit. So this is now Krishn's presentation, and I would talk a little bit about the Indian Mountain Initiative, and you can jump in if I'm actually not going properly, because I know so sustainable development has been an issue since independence, and Indian Mountain Initiative is a few like-minded individuals who and institutions collectively, which are known as the initiative, which is looking to formalize itself and is a platform to change the status quo. So they've had some notable success in terms of trying to actually get the Planning Commission to look at the hill areas or the mountain areas differently. They've had success in trying to actually motivate the MOEF to look at the mountains differently and set up a mountain division, for instance. So they've had some success in terms of actually on the Planning Commission side, also on the Ministry of Environment side, to look at policies that are being devised very often only for the plains and not really, not really customized for the mountain regions. So they've actually been doing this from 2011, and their simple vision is to making people of India proud of their mountains. And I think most people in India are proud of their mountains. But if you actually stay there for a long time and you see the condition that the mountains are now suffering from, you may not be. So it's once again to reclaim that pride, and it is an initiative to look at these mountain regions more carefully, and in a sense look at sustainable development paradigms for it. So what we've had is that in 2011, we started the Sustainable Mountain Development Summits. I think IMI brought in policymakers, brought in MPs, brought in urban departments, brought in departments looking from Environment and Ministry across India and across the 11 states to look at clearly what sustainable mountain agenda should be like. And so we've had 3 of them, last one being in Kohima, and the next one is actually being planned through a series of workshops in the middle to understand what it should focus on. And we have honed in on actually in the 4th Sustainable Mountain Development Summit to look at the urban areas. And I think the theme is improving governance and development in mountain states for a hot, flat, and crowded world. We have to look at developmental governance for hill councils, preparing mountain towns and cities for more people and better amenities, and reshaping science and technology for mountain areas for a warmer world and climate change, which I've very briefly hinted, but that is obviously affecting the mountains way more than it has been affecting the plains where policy is made. So there is a disjunct there which needs to be addressed. So let me just now quickly pass this on to Ann, and he's been actually working on a vision for Mussoorie in particular, and he's going to talk about that in more detail. But it is applicable to all mountain cities who can actually then customize the approach that has been taken to create a vision which will enable them to see that they can transit from the business as usual scenario, which is now, which is at present, which will eventually lead to, I would say, a disoptimal configuration to something that's better and more sustainable. All right, Anne?
Thank you very much, Monish. A very good morning or afternoon to all of you. In a nutshell, maybe to introduce myself a little bit, I graduated as a Master's of Architecture in Delft in '93, and then I've worked for about 10 years in the Netherlands and in London. And since the last 10 years, I have been working and teaching in South Asia. That is Kabul, Delhi, and more recently Kathmandu. My team in Delhi was asked to look at if we could come up with a long-term vision for Mussoorie. Being the fact that the initiative was started up about 3 years ago, IMI, they had a lot of discussions. And in India, I have noticed that it's not very difficult to talk about things. People love to talk about things. But coming from the Netherlands and believing that 2 cultures know more than one, we felt that seeing is believing. And if you can come up as an architect with maps, with analysis, with research, And for Mussoorie, we made a very large architectural scale model to actually show what things could look like in the long-term future. Normally in reports you see this kind of information, and I like to read, but this is rather difficult to digest, especially for the younger generation. So we try to transform this kind of information with infographics in something that looks like this. Same, if you look at, let's say, the build-up of land use, and you need to provide insight. So if you look at the square at the bottom, the slopes and the build-up area, you actually see that the light green, which is about 2.5 square kilometers, that is the only piece available for Mussoorie, which is a little bit easier to read than this. Same here. You can make many graphs and get many information, but this just looks a little bit more easy to understand. And I think for us it's part of homework, but also to use infographics for communication. If I go a little bit to the event itself, we actually shared with, I think there were about 150 people present, mayors of cities, policy makers, Ministry of Urban Development people, private sector. Actually, IMI has a very good network that they built up in the last 3 years. But we felt with EBTC and my own platform Arkai that it would be good to take it one step further and to look at actions and solutions that could actually help the people on the ground. What we actually did is we came up with a strategy of 3 themes, if you like. This one is pure air, where you actually, if you say that pure air is an extremely important starting point for a mountain city to be healthy, to be attractive, to be living. There are many things related to pure air. Obviously, transportation and traffic is related to that, but also how you deal with water and with energy. The second one that we came up with is organic city. If you fundamentally change your life cycle of products and of the material that you use, you can actually dramatically reduce the amount of solid waste. You can do that by harvesting. For instance, if you collect in a sensible way the waste from human beings, you can make biogas, the biomass that you can use for composting. Why not set up organic gardens on the roofs of the buildings in the mountains? There are many ways in how you can actually make this a better place. Pedestrianization is an issue. Most mountain cities in this part of the world have only one road, and that road is between 6 and 9 meter wide. And the moment there is one big bus or somebody gets stuck or there is a little problem, you have immediately traffic issues and problems like that. Pedestrians are not taken in account at all, which actually in the long run makes the mountain cities very unattractive to visit. The third one is smart water. In this case, Mussoorie is a mountain city on a ridge on top of the mountain. So if you don't catch the water when it falls, you actually need to pump everything up from the lower valleys. So one thing is to harvest the water when it actually does fall. The second one is to store the water. And the third one is to actually see if you can, that's why the title is there, Smart Water, if you can use grey water. for instance, to wash the cars or to water the plants, rather than that you pump up white water. I use this terminology because I presume that most of you are aware of what it means. So pure air, smart water and organic city. With these three themes we made a large scale model. If you're interested how I look like, I'm the guy with the blue scarf pointing out to the people who are joining at Masuri the future model, maybe 2040 approximately, of how Masuri could look like. I think I'm handing it over now to Monish.
Yes, I think one thing is that what An's been talking about is there are specific needs of citizens that live in Masuri who would actually be availing services from, let's say, that the city is able to provide. And there are some deficiencies in that. There are deficiencies which are actually of scale, not of scope, because in terms of issues that they actually face during certain times, like for instance during the peak during the tourism season.
Yeah.
The issues are that how do you actually handle some of those? One is that is that you can design for them, and you can design for them in ways that are actually not disruptive in the sense of the lives of people or the lives of tourism. It helps to enhance both.
Yeah.
I think that's what the projects that were outlined. Some of the projects were related to waste, I think, and some of the projects related to smart water that you talked about. And these are all things that actually can be done with small changes that one needs to make, either in the urban norms, how things are financed, or funds are used to create utility level intervention, if you like, or projects to address the citizens, which themselves can actually do things on their own.
Yeah,
right?
Correct.
So it is a bit of both. So it has governance issues related to it. And I think in that case, therefore, the focus of IMI, which we talked about, is on governance, to see how actually the states can better utilize the funds that are available from the central government, which very often the case is looking at priority funding of these areas, and then using that fund in a more intelligent manner to actually provide for both the tourists as well as people who live there, obviously.
Yeah, if I can add to that, Monish, I think there are three things. One is that the timing to actually look at IMI and the opportunities there is excellent. They have started 3 years ago. In the beginning, it was doing things in their spare time with a lot of passion. But I think they are in the process now of establishing themselves as a registered organization. And that means that in the years to come, the existing funds for the mountains will increase dramatically. If you combine it with, you say it in a nice way, but I've been to many mountain cities in this region, and it is really a disaster. It's actually a rather urgent issue. Massive problems, and because of these massive problems and because of the awareness of the people who are involved, it also offers, we believe, good challenges, good opportunities. So it is not that we are trying to convince people in the mountains that they should do something, but it's more that the people from the mountains are requesting us if we can help and assist with real knowledge and recommendations, and ultimately with solutions. That's, I think, where the idea of the solution studio came from.
Yes, that's right. I mean, what EBTC has also been looking at with respect to different projects is to actually create some sort of solution that can actually address the the problems that are understood from the problem owner's perspective. And if you like, that is innovative bottom-up development that we call, where we could actually have a private sector partner proposing a project which can actually be something that can lead to social innovation and can also be hosting a technological solution which may be innovative. So in any case, innovation is one of the things that we do look at, but it is always to look at what the problem at hand is at this point, with a view to the future, which you've already talked about. Yeah. So in terms of, I'm going to just, at this point, because we have a lot of time and I'm hoping that we will get some questions from the audience, which would enable us to go further. But there are, at a global level, there is a commission on economy and climate, and there are many such commissions. And some of the questions that they are actually looking at, and things I've just flagged in, which people can look at and see how we can, for instance, how can these cities actually become more climate resilient in terms of their infrastructure. Lower carbon, of course, is not directly a priority that the government of India or the United States have had, but the issues that they are facing, that may be a good strategy, which is a good add-on. And with respect to, I think, one of the key problems that Anne again mentioned is mobility in these particular places. So I think most people in the northern part of the country do go to the Himalayas in their summer break or other breaks. And the issues are, I think, related to transport. I can narrate an incident from our own Mountain Cities workshop where we actually, on the 19th of January, there was snow for the first time in many years in Missouri. And it was not a lot of snow, but it threw the entire system out of gear. And we were supposed to start the conference at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and we only got to the venue at 12 o'clock at night. And after going through all the problems that the simple snow can actually engender in these cities. And so there are issues with respect to, let's say, the settlement of urban forms, and that's something that we talked about. If you are a city with a limited land area, you're sitting on top of a hill, what is the issue with respect to development? Is it more at the city level or more at a regional level? Which is why when EBTC looks at things, we are looking at a Missouri and a Dehradun, the plain cities, and etc., to see how these two are actually stroking each other in terms of economics, and also participating together to provide a livelihood for a lot of these citizens that live in the mountains, also obviously services. So let me just open it up, and maybe Anne, do you want to say something for that?
Yeah, I think Missouri is maybe the test case, but I think the discussion regarding the mountain cities is much more than, of course, one of the cities. So I think maybe in general we can say that this is not specifically about Missouri, but it is about all the mountain cities. And it's certainly not about quick fixes or window dressing to kind of quickly beautify something. There are sometimes, as in the rest of the world, political initiatives to do something very quick and to make it look a little bit nicer. But I think it seems that IMI and quite a few of the mountain cities are interested in fundamental long-term solutions. And long-term solutions means that you need to have a holistic approach, a multidisciplinary team, and it's actually quite hard work. So be prepared for that. Having said that, I think that one of the things that I would like to share with you is that there are many things happening. So a colleague professor of me, Mahavir, we both have been working for IMI also on the guidelines for the Ministry of Urban Development. Because if you want to change the equation and if you want to change the game, so to say, it is extremely important to work on multiple levels. So with the national government, like the guidelines in this case, but also with the cities in the mountains that are most willing to collaborate or that have requested for improvement in a specific field.
All right. I think we also have Krishna Rautela also on the webinar. He's not been able to join in reality. So we're just going to pass the first comment to him. It's not a question, I hope, or it could be a question as well. But Krishna, if you would like to actually add anything that we've missed.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon to everyone. Actually, it's a pleasure to be part of this webinar to technology, even though I'm not physically present there. And what all we have talked about these mountain cities through these presentations actually bring up a situation where we need to look at as to what needs to be done to stop the bleeding, as to speak. And then after that, what to do in terms of looking at reversing the situation. And third is in creating a model which will be fundamental change from what we're doing now. So in terms of urban issues, this has become the paramount concern, and how IMI has taken it up from last SNBS2, which we started in Gangtok, where the first time the issue was taken up, to SNBS4, which has become the basic theme of the SNBS. So it's very important that actually we can work out these solutions. And here it is important to point out that why Europe is very important for Indian mountain states is that Europe has a similar kind of condition like us. They have crossed some of these hurdles before, and then come to a situation where there could be very viable solutions available, which would not like be a quick fix, but which will also bring in certain technologies which will change fundamentally how we look at even this situation like transport. I mean, according to me, transport is a very fundamental tool with which you can change the scenario, which is in terms of the city services or resources. Currently, if you don't have transport, what is happening is the population is concentrating in certain areas only. That puts the pressure on resources. But if you bring in the transport, then you change the scenario where you delocalize and redistribute the populations, where the resources in some of the areas which are not being utilized will be utilized better. So it will be more like a redistributed urban population for everyone with the help of transport. So this is one of the solutions which can be very useful for us, and I think the examples are valuable in Europe which can be brought in. So this is my fundamental purpose of taking part in this webinar, that through this webinar we can at least find out what contribution Europe can make and take those into the SNBS4 as viable solutions. Thank you, Monish.
Yeah, thanks, Krishna. I think that again underscores what we did talk about, that the mobility may be one of the areas where there is already bleeding, as Krishna talked about in terms of the urban issues, where there is a need, and there is a need to stop what is currently going on in terms of scenario or business as usual, and to evolve. And I think that may be the case with most mountain cities. I'm quite aware of Shillong and other places which have the same problems that all mountain cities probably have, which is a small road and some traffic increase, and the increase in personal vehicles and no public transport. So everything adds up. So we are going to take a question now. I think the first question is by Santosh Buddh, and the question is regarding if we have some plan to set up pilot projects in Maharashtra. And I think one thing is that we did clearly say that it's Himalayan cities, but yes, you're right, the issues with respect to mountain cities across the country are also at hand, and the EBTC project does work across the country. So if there is, to answer it shortly, concisely, is that if there is a particular project which actually is addressing a certain need, for instance, if it is to do with water or with waste or etc., then that can be flagged to us in terms of our project opportunities that exist on our website, and we will take it up. But as of now, we are not really looking at setting up a pilot project right now. There are some projects in Maharashtra, but they are not on mountain cities as yet. I hope it answers that. And the second question that we did get was by Hitesh Kataria, And I think it is to say that the question is, in the long term, we may possibly be able to ensure that the Uttarakhand floods-like situations can be avoided, but what plans and recommendations can be done for the near future? So, he has a follow-up question, which is to say how to align the change of thinking between local government and private builders, which sometimes are at different levels, I guess, and then who are promoting unsustainable infrastructure in these cities, which is also the case. And so,
excellent question.
Yeah,
I think, Hitesh, if I can comment on that, I think that if you study the history of the mountains and the people who have been living there for a very long period of time, is that the architecture and the built environment makes actually a lot of sense. And in our academic, we call it vernacular architecture. So people are careful not to build too close to the river. People are careful not to build on the top of the mountains. People are very careful how they make the orientation of their house. So if you're in the higher mountains, you have your house facing the sun, so you have passive solar energy warming up the sun. What unfortunately has happened is that all this knowledge of vernacular architecture, because of, let's say, commercial pressure, maybe combined with people from outside the mountains and maybe a little bit of greed, people start building all kind of completely unsustainable and actually very dangerous structures in places where they should not be built. Nature can be fearful, and what has happened in Uttarakhand, of course, was a big disaster. But I think most of the reports also point the finger in our own direction as human beings, that we have messed up. So I think to come back to your question, what can we do about it in the short term? I think with brainstorm sessions and solution studios, where you over a period of maybe 1 week or 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks sit down with different stakeholders, you can actually give recommendations in different timescales. So yes, we do look regularly on long-term solutions, but you can make a package of emergency measures that don't have to wait for a longer period of time. If you look at the funding mechanisms, of course for Uttarakhand there was a lot of funding available, but of course that did not always end up in the right place. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I think yeah, we have a question, I think a spoken question from Mr. Puneet Pal Singh Bhoker, and can you go ahead, Puneet? Yeah, Puneet, are you there? Okay, we'll probably try to catch him later. I think we do have a question from I think Reena, an important question I think, which is saying that isn't there a necessity to create local employment opportunities and reduce the overwhelming dependence on tourism or thoughtless tourism development, and what kind of opportunities can be created which are different from the current norm? I think that is obviously one of the things that one looks at, and one of the themes that we will be looking at the SMDS4 in Ladakh is to actually look at the hot and flat and crowded world where people are traveling to places. I mean, people come to Delhi for tourist things. I sometimes am quite, let's say, amazed at that. But the tourism is going to be there, so there is the need to actually use the planning to address that, and there is obviously a need to actually create local employment opportunities, which are being done through different projects. What we are trying to do is to actually look at some of the issues which are utility-based. Let's say we're looking at transport, planning it at that level, or looking at solid waste management, or wastewater-related things which are utility issues which will exist nevertheless because they are currently not done properly anyway. So, and you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, Rina, that you hit the nail on the head when you talk about thoughtless tourism. Most of the time, the marketing of tourism is done by the words ECO, eco. But if you look at the ground reality, the C sometimes turns into a G, and it becomes ego tourism. And I think one of the issues of IMI is also to make it clear that in the mountains we would love to have many people coming, but it needs to be done in a much more responsible way than it is at present day. To give you an example, in Mussoorie we find out by the research that we did that about 28% of the traffic that is going through the main road, which is the Mall Road, actually is not coming to Mussoorie. It is through traffic. So if you know that 28% of the traffic doesn't have an interest in coming to the place, it just uses the road to go through, that would be a starting point to actually step up and make some action and make it clear that only the cars that want to go to Mussoorie can go through, and the other ones can take another route, or you can think about a bypass and these kind of solutions. Local employment. I've been working for the last 10 years in different countries in South Asia to work on initiatives that are bottom up, and I think with the European partners and the Indian Mountain Initiative, there is a very, very good network to look at things from the higher levels and to talk to key decision makers. But in my experience, the most sustainable and long-term sustainable projects only work if you make it inclusive. If you go to the people, if you listen to them, if you include them in your solutions. And I also think that EBTC has been advocating to and encouraging European knowledge partners in that field. Because if it's only technology that you throw at people, it's never going to work.
Yeah, I think thanks, and I think that's absolutely right. I think one thing that he did talked about was the idea about the transport-related issues and about through traffic that goes to Mussoorie. And sometimes there is a case to be made that the plains are quite far away from the mountains, and in terms of time, because it probably takes less time for you to catch a plane and go to Dubai than to get to Dehradun. And I think that is a concern that needs to be addressed, because there are ways in which the paths that we use just now, mountain roads that we use, which are actually scenic outposts or scenic roads, which can, don't become the roads where the tankers take, for instance, diesel to the heights where it needs to service, also use. So you actually have congestion of many sort, and actually a creation of what is called black carbon in the mountains, where therefore one of the issues that I think Hans started with was to look at pure air, because I mean sometimes you go to these mountain cities and you find air that's as polluted as Delhi, and which is pretty polluted. Okay, we do have another question from Ian, and I think Ian Miller has a question. So he's talking about a comment. I think we invest in eco-sustainability projects. What route can you suggest for a good investment strategy for a specific region? Should we meet with EBTC for better directional understanding before going directly to try and enter? Or that would be self-serving for me not to say any other way, but say, okay, you can certainly consult us. We would certainly be able to advise you a bit better, because we do cover the the country through our offices. But there are projects which are actually looking at investment. I think there would be a right connection to a lot of projects which are actually at this point being floated as possible solutions, but because of lack of good finance related options, not succeeding. So I think I would very much encourage you to look at the region approach. They could be within the Himalayan regions. There is a northeast area which is slightly different from what it is in the western parts of the Himalayas, where the issues are slightly different, and depending on where one finds something that is of your interest, one can look at that.
Yeah, I agree with it. I think it's always good to talk to multiple partners and then make up your mind. Both EBTC and IMI have an extensive network. They are also not, let's say, very biased in terms of that they have stakes in certain initiatives. So I think you would get a pretty good overview. As a preparation for the Mussoorie conference, my team actually prepared 6 best practice examples from all over the world in mountains, in different fields, energy, transportation, waste management, etc. And 6 examples from the region, including, of course, India. So I think the moment you have specific focus for the investment, then it becomes a matchmaking exercise. But I think feel welcome to approach EBTC or IMI or my platform. We are a non-for-profit trust and also not biased in that sense.
Okay, I think we have another question from Santosh Booth, and looking at what kind of contribution Indian researchers would be able to make. I think one of the things that comes to my mind immediately is that if you do have access to data, which is in a sense relevant, I assume unbiased, and everything which can actually be talked about, for instance, about, let's say, pollution in the mountain cities, then that data is something that is a definite requirement for researchers across the country to look at and to actually document, so that this can be more substantiated even further. So what the Mountain Initiative is looking at policy level interventions with the Government of India, and we are as participants within that ecosystem looking at projects. So there is, from projects to policy, you can look at each issue which actually may be relevant for you as a researcher and participate in this, because this is an open forum in a sense for research. Okay, I think there's another question from I think Dr. Raj Kamal Bhargav. I think impact of good and dependable communication network in planning process for sustainable development of green cities. I think that there is, I think there's complete agreement with what you were trying to say, because I mean, in terms of what I've been talking about was actually a logistical link which links the plains to the mountains more easily. I mean, after all, it's only 250 kilometers from here to Dehradun or Mussoorie, and it should not take 8 to 10 hours to reach. Yeah.
In addition to that, Monish, I think that what I also feel is extremely important, that we base ourselves on the facts and the figures. I call it, whether I work as a professional or whether I teach at one of the universities, doing your homework is very, very important. And I think the media, in the largest sense of the word, in the Himalayan region, the radio is actually the most important media, different than television or newspaper. But it's extremely important to communicate and to find out, let's say, the real figures. Because, of course, there can be political figures, and there can be things that are twisted and turned. So I think your question is extremely relevant, because the moment you don't do your homework and you base yourself on imaginary figures, you can go completely wrong in the recommendations or in the solutions, or let's say in the field work.
All right, I think we had another question looking at, I think the question is on, windmills instead of, for the Himalayas instead of for generation of electricity, again by Puneet, who we tried earlier to connect directly. And I think that is something that's nearly out of my domain right now, but I can actually flag it to my energy sector expert, Vittal, and maybe we can get back to you on that. But I think the basic issue with respect to this is I think there is obviously a lot of wind, and the issues with respect to that should not be an issue. It is probably just a technological issue in terms of siting, in terms of availability of land, and having that much land available for a windmill farm, which would actually look at supplying a utility level generation. But you can have many other things that one can look at, distributed generation, etc. Do you have a view?
I actually do. Coming from the Netherlands,
Yes,
I always would like to talk about windmills. No, I think there are two levels, or actually maybe three levels, on how to approach renewable energy. One is the micro level, where you install a smaller micro hydro, or you install a solar panel, or you install a smaller scale windmill to actually, or biomass, where you actually generate enough renewable energy to handle your own micro situation. Then on the macro level, of course, you talk about the energy that is needed for cities or for whole areas. But we do see that the very large hydropower installations, there is quite a bit of resentment about it. And the level in between, where you cluster in a smart way the smaller individual renewable energy sources, the key issue there is the storage of that energy. But you do see more and more experiments in the field of more innovative means of getting energy. Energy is important. One of the things I remember from the top of my mind was a presentation not so long ago about somebody who had an experiment with liquid that actually generates light. So the only thing you need to do is fill a plastic bottle with that specific liquid. It absorbs light in the daytime and it actually radiates it out in the nighttime. So for villages and children who need to study their books, that seems to be a solution. I don't know the content of the liquid, so I hope chemically that doesn't damage it. But windmills could be absolutely a solution on a micro scale, I think.
Yes, I mean, I think once again you hit the right point, because I think there is a need for looking at each possible, let's say, project specifically. You can't just actually use one technology. It could be a hybrid way. You look at biomass, which is created either from solid waste management, if you are doing your solid waste management properly in terms of separating out organic and inorganic matters and plastics and other issues. It actually can link up to become significant. I think the problem with energy storage is significant enough to make renewable energy at the smaller scale not viable beyond the household level at this point. But that could change, and we could have some solutions which could actually look at those particular things.
Yeah.
And we could also look at maybe a smaller level micro, what were called hydrogens, I think in the northeast, which was in Nagaland, which is very small, 1 kilowatt, 2 kilowatt units, which would look at supplying electricity to villages because they were just looking at one, probably a night light and a few other things. So those kind of things are there. So it's just that the technology is certainly there. The issue is how we can hybridize it and create a solution for a particular problem and address it. Because, I mean, we can't just suggest it and not have the participation of people there, then it would certainly not go forward at all.
That's basically it's tailor-made solutions. So when we were asked with our team to design a visitors center and community center in the Wakhan, that is 3,000 meter altitude in Afghanistan, the northeast, you have to take into account the dryness of the climate and the culture of the people to actually make a building or a built environment that works over there. We've also done work in Ladakh, and Ladakh has had influences of climate change, where in the good old days they never had big rains, but that is changing as we speak. And we've also worked on projects with WWF and the Forest Department in Sikkim, where obviously the massive amount of rain coming down, it's about 3.5 to 4,000 millimeters in a year, is the key issue to designing a built environment that actually works. So in terms of renewable energy, the question that we had before the wind, it's more, I think, a spectrum of different solutions and always find the right solution for the right spot. And so the Himalayas is not one thing. There are many, many different climatic zones. So I think the bigger your spectrum of solutions is, the chances that we can make it work is much better.
All right. Thanks. I think that's absolutely in line with what we think needs to happen. Let me open a question to Dr. Kamal Bhargav. I think he's going to take a spoken question. So, Dr. Bhargav, can you please tell us your question?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, good. I have enjoyed the discussion and the presentation by the experts, especially
Thank you.
the inputs by Mr. N. Feenstra. Just now I had raised a question about the use of telecommunications and the importance. I strongly believe that good telecommunication within the village or a small city prevents migration of population in search of work to the larger cities. If sustainable development of the city involves good communication and local energy through the use of solar water systems, solar light emitting systems, small lanterns, for example, that will allow solar lanterns that would allow the child to read and complete their studies. That would lead to better development of the city as well as of the population, and they will not be running here or there.
Yes.
All that so far has been, I mean, in my opinion, most of this has been missing. Instead of making roads which are good for motors and lorries and big buses, if we can give better telecommunication facilities and electrical energy, either the grid energy from hydro systems or from solar, it would improve the chance of better development and more sustainable development and better direct benefit, as Mr. Feenstra was saying, the inclusive growth of the local population.
Yeah, I fully agree. It's very important that there is empowerment, and the moment mountain villages and mountain cities become more self-sustainable, they will also have an impact, a positive impact in that sense on the migration patterns. And telecommunication and access to, let's say, the World Wide Web is definitely a part of this self-sustainability improvement.
Okay, thank you
very much for your observations.
Thank you. And I think we're going to take Krishna. Are you there? You have a question as well.
Yes, I'm here. Yes. basically, I don't have a question. I was trying to just come into discussion with a couple of issues which are raised. Okay, so what we are talking about is the urban agenda and the typical concept of the rural agenda, where we are thinking that people can stay in villages and they would find local livelihood, and we are going to provide them the resources to sustain themselves within that particular area. Unfortunately, the current trend of development, that's not going to happen. People are going to move into larger cities in search of more work, more development agendas are going to come into these cities only. Even the amenities which are required, they are not going to be scaled down to a level of where the villages can sustain themselves. So we need to be prepared for a slightly larger scale of the requirement in terms of energy, telecommunication, transport, healthcare, everything which is currently designed to serve cities have to be brought to mountains also. We cannot just exclude them, saying that these places only the certain kind of a rural agenda would work. That's why the whole discourse, which was initially in my mind also was surrounded by the idea of the forest, communities, livelihood, had to also take note of this urban agenda. So that is my point of view with respect to a couple of questions which are raised, which are local small-scale solutions. Yes, those will be needed in a smaller scale urban habitat or maybe rural habitat. The slightly larger scale has to be thought about.
Yeah, thank you, Krishna. I think that is a key observation, because what we are talking about is an issue of urbanization. I think there are no two ways about urbanization across the country, and the mountains are no exception to that. And in terms of looking at livelihoods and the way they evolve, with respect to both the opportunities that are present in these cities. I mean, if these cities are able to actually support a larger population better, then they can actually create livelihoods, which actually could be even, for instance, some things which are not location dependent, such as, for instance, we talk about some IT sector issues with respect to setting up those kind of, let's say, I would call them call centers or other aspects of IT outsourcing that exists. At this point, it happens very unoften. It does happen, I think. And the issue is to look at livelihoods, not just from the issue of rural livelihoods. I think there are many issues with respect to that, and we haven't, and are not talking about mountain agriculture, which is a different and specific topic, and maybe even more pessimistic than the cities. But the issues with respect to addressing mountain, let's say, agriculture, is to connect them to the plains. Is not to not connect them. Because if they are not able to sell their produce, if the farmers and the farm producer organizations are not able to sell their produce to the consumers in the plains, who can offer them better margins, then they are not going to be able to stay in their villages, and they will migrate. So the migration issue is, in that sense, addressed from that point of view. And do you have?
Yeah, I have been.
May I come in?
Just a second, you come in.
I have been advising and working with ICIMOD, the Mountain Institute in Kathmandu, and I think what is always very important is that you look at the chain of value. And to give you an example, the moment you have apples in your mountain village, and you try to get the apples out as they are ripe, and you get a certain price for it in the plains, that is one thing. But the moment you can make apple jam or apple cider and actually add value, or dried apple, you can add value in, maybe it's organic or maybe it's packaged in a certain way. But it's very important to keep that added value, I think, in the mountains, rather than kind of shifting it out. In addition to Monish, where if the connectivity of the place is better, it doesn't always mean that you immediately talk about a road. It can also be that there is a very good connectivity to the World Wide Web, and you can be, for instance, you can be a graphic designer who is living in a mountain village. As long as you're connected to the rest of the world, you can actually get your livelihood up there. So you actually disencourage so you can have a good life in the mountains and yet be a part of the services that are provided.
Okay, Krishna, why don't you get a word in, because I think we are going to conclude it.
Yeah, I just wanted to connect with 2 points. So the one which you're talking about, the agriculture and rural areas. See, if you really look at the international context also, the developing economies, initially they were exporting, right? And they were trying to develop their growth through the export. But the ultimate sustainable growth will come when the markets within those countries grow. Okay. Similarly, the context of the mountains. So if there are no developed markets within the mountains, this connectivity issue is always going to be there. And it's talking about the value chains. Those value chains, some of that value has to be created and given back to people as closer to their homes as possible. The moment we bring that connectivity issue and it becomes only connectivity of certain kind and not connectivity of other kind, then also that limits the value chain possibilities in that particular area. So for example, if you want to develop rural growth, the rural growth will come if the urban centers where the consumption can happen can come closer to those rural areas. With more distance, there will be more difficulty in terms of reaching out any economic those areas. So the urban centers and mountains have many contexts. One could be development engine aspects of that particular area. They could be also in terms of sustaining that in an ecological manner so that it doesn't really burst some of these, the barriers which are already in place, and actually we can see the effect of that today. So looking at that in a sustainable manner, balanced manner, finding solutions for those so that rural and urban can coexist in that particular area. Otherwise, the only rural in the mountains, urban in the plains, I mean, you can see the disasters happening later.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's what it is. I think we will conclude. I think, Anne, do you have a concluding observation or something that you would like to share? And then I'll conclude as well.
The only thing I would like to ask everybody who's listening, that the next time you go and visit the mountains, that you are a little bit aware that you not only take things, pictures or good experience or whatever, but that you also think about what you can actually give back to the mountains. Thank you.
Thanks, let me conclude by telling you once again that the EBTC is a European Union project which looks to connect India and European Union, largely SMEs, also knowledge providers, in 4 sectors: biotechnology, energy, environment, and transport. And we're looking at projects, we're looking at technology collaborations, research, innovation, and among other things. So in that sense, what this webinar has actually talked about is what we are trying to do in the urban clean tech collaboration between the European Union and India, in this case between EBTC and the Indian Mountain Initiative and its own ecosystem that is developing, to see if there are possible places, if you like, or projects where we can actually do work in a very concerted manner. So we would like, for instance, to organize a clean tech expert mission to a mountain city and talk about, with experts, to come up with a system which actually addresses the immediate need and then addresses the future as well. So thank you very much for listening in, and this is going to be available on our web. So if you think this was a good webinar and you would like to recommend it to your friends, please go ahead. We are also going to possibly also add more stuff onto this onto the EBTC website, which actually is going to be hosting this webinar in full, and some details maybe on some details from the Mountain Initiative also, and how the next I think Mountain Initiative is planned for Ladakh. It's planned in September. The dates are to be actually confirmed with the government, and there is an election-related delay in that confirmation. That is at this end, and so there will be a lot more that we'll be looking at in terms of cities, and mountain cities in particular, and Himalayan cities as we talked about. Thank you so much.